Welcome to CineMyles, the show for cinephiles. I'm your host, Miles Hughes. I'm joined once again by Mr. Jan Buksar, and we just saw T2, Judgment Day, which features Arnold Schwarzenegger reprising his iconic role as the Terminator. Only this time, he's back to protect John Connor against the nefarious liquid metal T-1000. Oh wait, sorry, what did we watch?
Trainspotting 2.
T2 Trainspotting, which isn't a confusing title at all. Thanks, Danny Boyle. The 21 years late sequel to the original Trainspotting, which is part of that 90s sort of indie new wave that had directors like Tarantino and Guy Ritchie and the Coen brothers all really coming into their own and pushing sort of what storytelling could be and how things could be shot.
Using on what was then seemed like a very limited budget, very visually stunning movies, incorporating a lot of music and dealing with subjects that were not necessarily the things that everybody thought was going to be a draw for people to go to see the movies, like heroin.
Yeah, these movies about sort of what it really feels like to be on a drug, to have that experience sort of transplanted onto the screen. Mm-hmm. To talk about the original briefly, it's a very, very stylish film, but also one that's very rooted in character. It features, I think, one of Ian McGregor's best performances, very grounded and natural.
I mean, it's what made him a bona fide, up-and-coming rising star for Hollywood to want to grab onto.
And now it's kind of interesting looking at him 20 years later, because he's really kind of a hunk now. And it's hard to sort of portray him as being washed up because he's Ewan McGregor. Yeah. And even the opening scene where he's running on the treadmill, he looked jacked. And I remember the original film, he's really almost skeletal.
Those of you who love Ewan McGregor the way I do, you get to see his ass, and it still looks good.
Pretty hairy too.
I think Ewan Bremer was the one that surprised me the most. His character, the Spud, is 20 years later still a heroin addict.
The only one out of them who's still...
recovering day by day still. I would like to think that he worked at that look for the role, that he looks more healthy in real life.
Yeah. Johnny Lee Miller looks pretty much the same, too.
Yeah.
Like Ian McGregor, he kind of has pretty good body. I want to say most of those tattoos are probably his own.
I was going to say the sleeve. I was like...
So it's kind of weird where there's a scene where they're running around naked and it's meant to be super embarrassing, but they're also two of the hunkiest guys.
Nobody would be embarrassed if they looked like that running naked.
Well, the one thing that right off the bat didn't work with this new film for me was this whole insistence on the fact that they all grew up together, which wasn't really in the original. They may have mentioned it offhand, but it wasn't a big plot point that they were childhood friends or whatever. Here, there's this stock footage of 5-year-old versions of them that they keep cutting back to, and it doesn't really gel with what you know about these characters, especially the Robert Carlyle character, who looks at least 10 years older than all of them.
When they mention it, that they all went to school together, you go, no, I don't care how not intelligent he was or how,
Well, yeah, they have a throwaway line we got held back a few years. It's did he get held back in first grade for a decade? How bad was it?
Because if he did, then there's something else wrong with him, and that didn't seem to be the case. Sometimes you really don't want to go back again, and I think that was part of, the problem with the film is...
Yeah, well, it had this push and pull of sort of on the one hand, sort of wanting to celebrate this moment from their past, but also having to acknowledge the fact that for kind of all of them, it was the worst part of their lives. Was this thing that they're kind of celebrating. And what was so effective about the first film was that it was very honest with both the highs and the lows of addiction.
Yeah.
And the problem with this one, ultimately, that I have is that it doesn't have that propulsive force of the addiction being a constant factor, because, as we said, Spud's the only one who's really doing it anymore. Yeah. There's one quick throwaway scene where the other two go back and do it again, but it doesn't really contribute anything or mean anything in the context of the film.
Yeah, I thought the only thing interesting about it was watching the two of them do it and then getting sort of Spud's point of view where he just can't. He refuses to. And I thought that, for me, was the most powerful thing about that scene.
Right. The first one had that sort of wave of sort of a general experience, whereas this one is kind of like a bunch of old guys seeing each other again for the first time. They're just kind of hanging out. It almost feels like a Richard Linklater film.
Yeah.
It's just people hanging out and like...
It feels sort of in the middle, like they're trying to remember, oh yeah, there has to be a plot of some sort. I don't know.
Well, there's the whole contrived thing with Robert Carlyle, like, coming back to, you know...
Hunt them down.
Yeah, which feels forced pretty much the entire time. Like, the only time Begbie really shines as a character is through the whole subplot with his son.
Yeah.
Which I thought was well done and nice and subtle, and it helped give some shadings, because otherwise he would come across as an incredibly one-dimensional villain character. There were a lot of callbacks to the original. Some of them were cute, some of them were distracting. The one that flat out did not work for me is the new twist on the choose life speech. I could tell what they were going for. It almost came across like a 25th Hour style monologue, sort of against modern society. But in the context of the film, it kind of comes across as 60-year-old Danny Boyle being like whiny about Facebook and sort of social media. There's not one, but two callbacks to the toilet. They reference a lot of the characters who didn't survive.
They bring back Kelly MacDonald's character in a cute little cameo bit. That
I wish she'd had more to do. She was so fun.
Yeah, it
for
was
like
good.
5 seconds.
It's good to see her again. Irvine Welsh, who wrote Trainspotting, pops back in, and I was like, oh look, he's there.
Yeah,
and he looks exactly the same.
Renton's dad, who in the time since has now become Lord Commander Mormont in Game of Thrones, is now back for like a much less glorious cameo.
Still have not seen Game of Thrones.
Get around to it!
Oh! It succeeds part of the way and it fails part of the way because it still has to be a movie about something. And I don't know that he knew what it was about, essentially.
Yeah, it never quite lands on sort of a thesis statement or any sort of message, and it kind of ends on this weird note of, again, kind of caught in the middle between sort of celebrating this wild and crazy time, but also having to acknowledge that it was actually a awful, terrible time. Danny Boyle, every bit the wonderful visual stylist that he's always been, you know, and there's a lot of his signature sort of visuals and sort of, you know, whether it's split screening or crazy flashing lights effect or projections, stuff that's done clearly practically. There's a lot of really nice visual stuff in this. And it's also really funny. I might even go as far as to say I think it's funnier than the original.
Oh, I would say so. I would say there's definitely a lot more humor in this one.
Well, the humor feels natural, too. It doesn't feel forced in the way that it could.
It also feels like for people who are very comfortable with one another.
It's very enjoyable. Like, I think at the end of the day, I would recommend it to fans of the original. Only to fans of the original. If you haven't seen the original, I don't know that you would get anything out of it. And it's fine and it's fun, but I'll probably have forgotten most of the things that happen in it by tomorrow.
Yeah. When it comes out on video or on Netflix, absolutely, go see it.
All right, so that's going to do it for us on CineMyles. Check out T2 Trainspotting. What is going on with that title? Really? It doesn't make sense to me. Thank you for watching. Be sure to like, share, comment, subscribe, do all those fun things. Thank you for joining me, Jan.
Thank you, Miles.
And we will catch you on the flip side. Have a good night.